What's up, y'all? How you doing? I thought I'd do something a little bit different tonight. I've been talking to my buddy, Eric Bauer. Dude's been just pretty much zoning out to movies lately. And I just thought, this is kind of an idea I had for a different kind of video where I would list off some of my favorite movies from worst to best or whatever. Didn't put a whole lot of thought into this, and a couple of the movies I don't have physical copies of because some of them are pretty rare and hard to track down. Movies aren't like a huge deal in my life, but throughout the years, some of them have been. Some of these movies are just so near and dear to me, just like my favorite albums are. I didn't really necessarily grow up watching movies at all. I had some pretty strict parents that wouldn't even allow me to watch He-Man when I was a kid. So, a lot of the movies, like horror movies and stuff, that a lot of my friends and a lot of metalheads grew up watching, like The Nightmare on Elm Street and stuff like that, had zero experience with those movies at that time. I saw Star Wars. I was a really big Star Wars kid when I was young. But yeah, like the horror movie stuff, I never got around to watching because I knew that by the time I was allowed to watch those movies, it was too late. I feel like the effect of Nightmare on Elm Street would be really lost on me these days. Especially these days because I really don't have the patience or what's the word I'm looking for here? Attention span to follow through with a movie. I like a documentary where you can just kind of like zone out or tune out and fart around on your phone for a few minutes because there isn't necessarily a storyline where if you miss something, you're going to be left in the lurch here. But, back in 2003, maybe 4 or so, I felt like it was the first time where I had changed my focus from music to movies, if only for a minute. And it kind of all started, I had seen an interview with Crispin Glover on a late night show one night, and he was talking about this new movie that he was doing, where he was going around touring with this movie that he had directed, called What Is It? And I went to, and like he was touring with it in Milwaukee, so I went to Milwaukee, and he did a Q&A for an hour and a half long after the movie. First of all, the movie was amazing. The Q&A just really got me, like a lot of name drop movies were talked about there during the Q&A, and I met some people who suggested other movies to get into and stuff, and I felt like it was just like a nosedive straight into film noir and artsy kind of movies and stuff like that just really had placeholders in my taste waiting for those movies to kind of find the movies that I would have loved. So like my palette was already there for a lot of these movies, and when I found them, just instantly I was blown away. So I'll talk more about them as I get into my list, but that's just really like kind of a little bit of a background as far as movies in my life is concerned. But so I didn't spend a lot of time in this list. I didn't really necessarily rank them, like spend a lot of time ranking them, because honestly I don't care which ones are better than which ones, and it's not like saying I would prefer to say I love this movie more than this one rather than this movie is better than this one. So just a little fair warning on that. Anyway, so from the bottom up, so the end of this movie is going to be my favorite movies, and starting right now, just the best ones, I guess. So we'll start off with, by the way, what we're listening to is Download's The Eyes of Stanley Payne. It's great. If you like Skinny Puppy, you ought to love this. The second half of the album is awesome, as you will hear. Okay, Tetsuo Iron Man, directed by, is it Shinya Tsukamoto? Came out in 1989. This is an all black and white movie, 67 minutes in length. This is just one of the most outrageous scream fest movies I've ever seen. It's been a long time since I have seen this, but man, I remember smoking a lot of weed and putting this on. And it's just kind of one of those movies that I think a lot of college kids wind up discovering. But this guy winds up turning into a robot and freaking out. His girlfriend ends up catching the same virus where they both slowly turn into robots. There's some incredibly weird sex scenes where robot parts are doing what sex parts do. Really good movie, Tetsuo Iron Man. There's also a sequel. I can't think of what it's called. There's 2 sequels, I think. Body Hammer and Iron Man or something like that. Ichi the Killer director did this one. Shinya Tsukamoto also directed Ichi the Killer. So next we've got Street Fucking Trash. Yeah, I just kind of had to have an 80s schlocky sort of gore movie in the list, and man, this is the one that I can still watch. I spent a lot of time in my 20s when I was discovering metal. On the weekends, my friends and I would just get together and do bong rips and go to Blockbuster Video and pick out weird movies and watch them and laugh our asses off. So that also accounts for a lot of my taste. So Street Trash is one of them. I just randomly picked this up at a Mr. Movies one time. Thought it looked pretty decent, and holy shit, this is a really great movie. It's super cheesy. It's about a bunch of bums who get into some contaminated ancient booze, which liquefies their guts over the course of a couple of days, and hilarity ensues. Next, we've got a documentary, Crumb, Terry Zwigoff's maybe best movie. A lot of people say this is like the best documentary ever made. I don't know. What's the point in saying that? But Robert Crumb was an artist famous in the 70s for his keep on trucking kind of art and comic books and stuff. There's just been a lot of media attention for this guy and his family members because they're weirdos. They're just absolute weirdos. And the movie is just so well made. It's just one of the most perfectly made documentaries where the cinematography just really matches the mood of this weird character. His brother is a super, super weirdo. Actually, both of his brothers are super weird. And also there's, what's his name? Harvey, I don't know. American Splendor was made about that guy too. Anyway, great documentary. One of my favorites. There's just so many classic lines in it. Just so many weird interactions with him and his family. Just such a goofy movie. Also, I don't have a copy of it, or I can't find it or something. I've actually been purging a lot of my movies the last few years, but along with that one, I would say like these both can share number 12 on my list. But American Movie is also one of my favorite documentaries. Really just fits right alongside Crumb as a biopic of a couple of movie makers from Wisconsin. There's just so many really hilarious interactions and weird lines. Just really funny stories going on in that movie. Check out American Movie. It's fucking hilarious. Next, we've got from 1962. This is Harakiri, directed by Masaki Kobayashi. Was kind of a latecomer to this Criterion movie. And honestly, like a 1960s black and white samurai movie, I would have told you to fuck off. But I don't know. I just got into the film noir kind of stuff, and this was one of them that I wound up picking up on Netflix. I'm sure a lot of you guys will tell me that Kobayashi also directed millions of other amazing, brilliant samurai movies that I've got to check out. I don't know if I ever will, because how could it top this one? This movie has such a serenity to it and calmness about it that's just eerie, and it's hard to really tear your attention away from until the battle scenes. There's only like really 2 of them. So it is kind of a samurai movie, but it also has more to do with the life of a samurai in particular, trying to infiltrate, I guess, a village of others. Won't give away too many, but check this movie out. It's brilliant. Harakiri. It's a beautifully made black and white movie. So here's where we get into the kind of weird section. I think a lot of these choices will be things that you won't see on other people's best of movie lists. So that was another reason I kind of wanted to do this, because I think my list and my favorite movies are going to prove to be kind of left of center from a lot of people's favorite movies. So we got Liquid Sky. This came out in 1982 and was directed by Slava Sukerman. I don't know, actually I'm pretty sure Slava Sukerman never directed anything else after this movie, but it's about aliens land in New York during the club scene days, and they try and infiltrate the dance clubs and stuff. Just really strange acting. The soundtrack to this movie, Eric Bauer recently did a video talking about soundtracks and movies. This is one of my favorite soundtracks and movies, I guess, probably of all of these movies. The soundtrack to this one just stands out to me far and away as one of the weirdest soundtracks I've ever heard. I don't believe it was ever released on any physical format. I've downloaded the thing over the years. But anyways, Liquid Sky, Slava Sukerman, check this out. By the way, I may, depending on copyright and stuff like that, it's really hard to navigate that kind of stuff on YouTube. I may try and splice in little clips from these movies. Obviously, I would think the bigger movies that are in here, I'm going to get dinged from copyright instantly, so I probably won't be able to do a good chunk of these movies as clips, but I'll see what I can do. I'll try to do what I can do. Next, we've got Videodrome. Pretty obvious choice because this movie is goddamn brilliant. This is a kind of a boring Blu-ray version. I love a lot of Cronenberg movies, but this one, to me, I kind of appreciate how he builds up to the really strange sort of gory body horror kind of stuff and doesn't really inundate you with that aspect of the movie. I love The Fly, but I kind of feel like he could have pulled back on that aspect of things a little bit and made it a little bit more mysterious and not quite so forthcoming and inundating with the strange aspect of it. Anyways, Videodrome, I'm sure you've seen it if you're watching this. Next, so this is a movie, I guess one of the things you could say about my upbringing with my parents kind of constricting what I was able to consume movie-wise, music-wise. It's just kind of weird what kind of movies I was able to or allowed to watch, or what I liked back then, actually. Money Pit was one of the huge movies that I would always rent when we, like, our tradition was on Friday night, we would go to the video store, maybe every other Friday night or so. We were really dirt poor growing up, so we would rent a VCR and pick out 2 movies. And I would pretty often pick out Money Pit and The Journey of Natty Gann, from what I can remember. But also, when my parents divorced and I lived with my mom, this was one of the movies my mom let me pick out. And David Lynch's The Elephant Man. She probably let me pick it out because Anthony Hopkins is in it. My mom always had the hots for Anthony Hopkins. But what a fucking amazing flick. It's really incredible how it was made in 1980, but he kind of sidesteps any time stamping, I guess, for lack of a better term. This story obviously took place, oh boy, I don't know, 100 years ago, I'm going to say. And it's a black and white movie, too. So kind of takes you back in time, but having it be a black and white movie sort of also lends to that sort of aspect of taking you back to these days. Just brilliant cinematography and kind of one of those David Lynch movies where it doesn't feel like a David Lynch movie. It doesn't have all that sort of like dysmorphic storytelling kind of stuff where you don't know what's going on and it's all crazy. This is really linear and biographical, but what a well-made and just strange movie and story, really. I think the makeup was really well done. So I don't really know what to tell you about Begotten. Good luck finding a copy of it for less than $100. This is a... What the hell is this? Oh. So this is just a bootleg that I made of it many years ago. So Begotten was made by, actually this is like a college project, I guess, of Elias Merhig, who later went on to direct Shadow of the Vampire, which was a pretty awesome movie, but really has nothing in common with this movie. This is a total art noir film, kind of horror kind of thing. There's a very thin sort of storyline. I guess it's kind of mocking a story in the Bible, kind of trying to read here and see if there's really anything. It doesn't really say anything. It's just basically about the birth of Jesus. And there's no dialogue to it. There's no music in it. It's just some of the most horrifying imagery and sound ever compiled into a movie. It's absolutely a fucking fever dream nightmare. I first heard about it when my friend Ron went to the public library and picked it up because it was so weird looking. And I think he said he took it home and it made his wife cry, and I was instantly sold then. So picked it up and watched it with my buddy when we were stoned, and we were pretty petrified at the end of this movie. So yeah, Begotten, pretty fucking out there movie. I think you'll recognize this from the cover of a Catatonia EP or album, if I'm not mistaken. Might have been a reissue or something like that. Anyway, so I talked a little bit about this movie. Crispin Glover's What Is It? I've got this at number 6 if we're keeping track. So this is also a bootleg, but I'll tell you why this is a bootleg. So Crispin went through Crispin Glover directed it and acted in it. Went through rigorous toils to produce this movie, and I feel kind of bad about having a bootleg of it, but I don't know. It's an amazing movie, and the chance to own it, I just couldn't pass it up, or download it, I should say. So he went through tremendous rigors to produce this movie, and so as a result, he does not commercially release this movie because A, he wants to be able to make as much money as possible from it in person, and also he doesn't want to show the movie to people without being there in person to answer any sort of insecurities or questions about the movie that you would have after seeing it. So you cannot watch this movie unless you download it without having Crispin Glover in person to do it. And I highly recommend doing that. If he should come to your city, playing this movie or its sequel or the sequel after that. There's actually 2 sequels, only one of which you can actually watch. If he comes to your town, I really, really strongly urge you to do it. I've done it 5 times. And it's just an incredible experience. First of all, it's like, I don't know, $20 or $30 for a ticket. First of all, he reads a slideshow from his many books, which are amazing. They're just kind of like artsy, what do you call them, blackout books. So the slideshow, the movie, the Q&A, and then an autograph session where you can go and chat with him and get him to sign your stuff. He's got some great merch going on. It's always a great time to also just hang out with people who are just absolute weirdos for this kind of stuff. So the film stars mostly mentally handicapped people, and it is an absolutely bonkers art film. This is a screener copy that leaked on the internet, and he's very pissed about it, but like I said, I couldn't pass up a chance to own it, and I made up my own packaging for it. So there you have it. I should be able to put a trailer for this movie in the either in the description down below or in this. So next time, number 5, to completely discredit any credibility that I have achieved so far with you, my number 5 movie, Garbage Pail Kids from 1987. This is a movie that was just always on cable TV whenever I was around a cable TV, and back then, I did kind of get into Garbage Pail Kids when I was a kid, and it was actually kind of a thing with my parents. If my dad ever caught me with Garbage Pail Kids in my room, he would tear them in half and throw them in the garbage. So this was kind of a taboo for me to be able to watch this movie. And so I never really got around to watching it until my buddies and I got into watching movies when we were stoned all the time. So it's a stupid fucking movie. It's absolutely hilarious. Garbage, dumpster fire of a movie. It's hilarious. I don't know. I just love it. There's no accounting for taste, is there? These ought to account for some taste. Bram Stoker's Dracula, directed by Francis Ford Coppola. I'm a huge Gary Oldman fan. I am not a fan of Keanu Reeves. If Keanu Reeves weren't in this movie, I wouldn't say he ruins this movie. But if he were not in this movie, I would maybe put this movie at number 1. That guy is hard to stomach. Anyways, the atmosphere in this movie is absolutely bone-chilling.
Listen to them, the children of the night. What sweet music they make.
I remember there was a period for a couple of months where I would just watch this movie, get really stoned, listen to Abigor, go back to watching this movie, listen to Abigor, smoke more weed. Abigor is the audio essence of this vampiric masterpiece. What an awesome movie. Let's see here. Number 3, I don't have a copy of it. It's impossible to find. Actually, I just sold my VHS copy of it a couple of months ago, maybe a year ago or so, in a lot with Street Trash and something else for $300 on eBay. So, and I didn't realize that it was so hard to come by on Blu-ray and DVD, but I have the shirt for it. This is Brain Dead. You might know the movie better as Dead Alive. The uncut version of the movie was actually originally called Brain Dead. So, Dead Alive by, what's his name? Peter Jackson. I originally saw Dead Alive, I guess, back in 96 or 7 or so, probably. And my buddies just kind of introduced it to me as a stupid, schlocky sort of gore movie, as like alongside Evil Dead or something like that, you know. But I was just really taken by the camera work, and the directing was just so well done. And then when I found out that he was going to direct Lord of the Rings trilogy, I was just completely floored. He was my favorite director before the Lord of the Rings trilogy ever came out, and did an amazing job at that. So I'm sure you've all seen Dead Alive. If you haven't, I don't know what to tell you. It's the goriest movie of all time. Absolute schlocky horror. It's amazing. Next, we've got Holy Mountain by Alejandro Jodorowsky. This is a nightmare, fever dream. This is the absolute definition of a art noir film. It came out in 1973. Alejandro Jodorowsky is a very interesting character, someone I kind of obsess over. Never had a chance to meet him, though. There are a lot of, I guess, artistic tenets and things that you would recognize that originated from the kind of the noir period or movement that Alejandro Jodorowsky was a part of. The first 30 minutes of this movie are silent. There's no, actually not silent, but no dialogue in them, I should say. Because Jodorowsky uses very strong metaphor and allegory to tell a story rather than get mired up in dialogue and acting and shit like that. And that, I think, is what probably most paints my taste or palette for movies is that I really get annoyed by too much dialogue in a movie. I feel like a lot of directors rely too heavily on dialogue to tell a story. Cinematography, like hell, a Dario Argento movie, just can do so much to tell you what's happening by painting a scene through visual effects rather than relying on dialogue and soundtrack and stuff like that. And that is really the strength of Holy Mountain. It's an absolute insane movie to conceptualize. I don't want to give it away too much, but definitely I urge you very strongly, if you've never seen Holy Mountain, check this out. And alongside number 2, I would also say El Topo belongs right around there somewhere. I just didn't want to have 2 Jodorowsky movies in my list. El Topo is kind of along the same lines of Holy Mountain, but it's more of a kind of hero's journey, sort of cowboy movie made 1 year before this. So just such a fascinating movie, and the story of how this movie was banned from everything until about 2007 or 8 or so. You couldn't see this movie unless you bought a bootleg of it from the years 1974 to 2007. So I had actually bought a bootleg of it on eBay, and the first time I watched this movie, I was drunk on wine, and I was just screaming my head off in my house at how outlandishly hilarious and just it was absolutely stretching my mind while I was watching it, and I will never fall out of love with that movie because of that. So, what do you guess my number 1 movie is, given that you know what all of the other movies are? Have any guesses? Put a comment down below. I'll give you a minute. Okay, so number 1 movie. This is the best movie ever made. I don't care what you say. This is it. This is the best movie ever made. And it has cat hair on it. Watch it because it's amazing. David Lynch directed it, and it came out in 1977. And this shaped what good movies would become for many, many years after. This is some weird edition that came out in 2000. I think this is actually one of the first commercial releases of the film. Kind of getting into some collector scum sort of business here. It's got a nice booklet with it. I don't know if this version is worth a bunch of money or not, but it's really nicely done, and I'm really happy to have a super nice copy of it on DVD. So yeah, Eraserhead, it's great. You probably already know it and love it. If you don't, check it out. Anyways, so that's it. That's my movie list. Hope you liked it. What are your favorite movies? Let me know down below. Thanks for watching.